Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. There's been a lot of mostly me lately, so I figure it's about time to mix it up a bit and give you two awesome interviews, seemingly from two totally different issues, but really, it's all couched under the same umbrella of standing up to the corporatocracy and outfitting yourself with both knowledge and inspiration to start and to keep fighting. So, with that in mind, let's start off with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. And it's taken me a long time to even know what these two words mean, but luckily, I'm not going to be the one explaining what they mean to you. I will, however, give a quick and easy how-to on getting started with Bitcoin, because it really is a lot easier than you may think. So, without further ado, let's get at the scoop on the future of money from cryptocurrency expert, tech entrepreneur, author, and frequent host of the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast, Andreas Antonopoulos.
Essentially, it's internet money. It's money without banks, without governments, network-centric, based on the internet. Just like email is communication without the post office, and the web is publication without news companies. Bitcoin is money without banks and governments, money of the people for the people on the network.
I like that. So basically, why? I guess in the digital age, it's pretty obvious why if you'd ask somebody, why do you use email as opposed to write letters? But why would you specifically use Bitcoin as opposed to trying to work within the confines of the system of money that we have currently?
Because the confines of the system of money that we have currently leaves about 4 billion people unbanked or underbanked and outside of the world economic system. It disenfranchises and disadvantages billions of people around the world. It doesn't scale. It doesn't offer solutions. It's hopelessly corrupt. It's unreformable. And it works as a nexus of large corporations and large governments covering each other's backs.
One of the main issues with the current money system is that it's not based on anything. It's just based on faith that it's going to work out okay. Which, of course, if that faith crumbles, then our entire economic power collapses. So what is Bitcoin based on?
Well, it's also based on faith. It's based on faith in different things. It's based on faith in the economic activity of the internet. It's based on faith on the productive potential of billions of people who have been disconnected from world economic affairs due to geopolitics. Increasingly, there are no systems of money that are not based on faith. Money is a means of communication. It's how we communicate value to each other. Bitcoin is just the latest iteration. The difference is that it is entirely electronic and decentralized, which means that no one has direct control over it. It's uncensorable, and it's internet-based. But it derives its value from the same proposition that all money derives its value, which is if a lot of people use it, and if I can expect that tomorrow I can use Bitcoin to buy products and services, then it has value to me.
Yeah, so basically it's just about shifting the paradigm from thinking about this as this abstract cryptocurrency is just thinking about it as money, essentially.
Yes, and more than money, it's a system of ownership. You can do some pretty exciting things with Bitcoin. You can, for example, register and transmit ownership of physical things, like you could record ownership of a bike or a house or a car and transmit that. You can do all kinds of things with complex contracts and the assignment of ownership. But at its basic level, the first app on the Bitcoin network is a basic currency app and a payment system, just like a credit card system. The difference is that I can send anywhere from $1 or 10 cents to $1 million from here to Kuala Lumpur in 5 seconds for a flat fee of about 2 cents, 2 US cents. And it doesn't matter how much money I'm sending, it costs about 2 cents. When the network is not very overused, you can even send free transactions without paying any fee whatsoever. If you compare that to what most people, like for example, immigrants pay in order to send money home through Western Union, on average 9%, that's a huge difference.
And so, I mean, just this idea that it's decentralized and it takes the governments and the banks and the corruption out of it, it seems like the obvious choice for the progression of activism and the progression of this sort of populist movement. Is there a chance, because this is always the question with activist movements, whether it be environment, Black Lives Matter, women's rights, can this be corrupted by the very banks and governments that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are trying to avoid?
Potentially, although if they manage to corrupt one implementation of this, they can't corrupt the underlying technological idea. There's over 1,000 currencies with different permutations of this idea. Bitcoin has certain characteristics. There's other currencies that have different characteristics based on the same decentralized system. But the power of decentralization is that it resists corruption because there is no single point of failure or center of power where you can apply pressure. You can't seize a server or lean on a company or monitor a specific server to see everything. So, that makes it much more resilient, just like things like BitTorrent and Tor on the web and things like that are decentralized and network centric. Corruption is a lot harder with systems like that.
And finally, I'm just curious because there are a lot of people that don't have internet access. So how do you see cryptocurrency as handling the issue that even a lot of Americans, particularly lower income, kids in schools that don't have access to the cryptocurrency and then therefore maintain their space inside this corrupt system? How do you see cryptocurrency trying to evolve within those confines of limited internet access?
Well, I think of it as really a gap between the technology and the infrastructure, and that gap is shrinking dramatically in two directions. First of all, Bitcoin is getting easier to use on simpler and simpler platforms. You can use Bitcoin over SMS on Nokia 1000 simple feature text messaging phone. There are almost 4 billion of those phones distributed throughout the developing world in places where people don't have clean water, don't have electricity other than a single solar panel to charge the single Nokia cell phone, but they have cell phones and they have text messaging. So data plans are not required. You can do it on much less infrastructure than that. There's a lot of interesting implications there. One of them is that, and this blows a lot of people's mind, is that you can take your entire Bitcoin wallet and you can translate it into 12 English words, memorize those, and then your money is essentially in your head. You can go anywhere in the world, cross borders, survive as a refugee on a boat, arrive in another country, take those 12 words and restore all of your wealth. No border person can seize it, no one can steal it from you, and no one knows that you have that money on you. And so you can imagine for empowering, for example, women in countries where ownership of money is illegal. There's a program where they're teaching Afghani girls how to code and get paid in Bitcoin, and they're not allowed to have a bank account, but they can own Bitcoin and essentially keep that hidden from men in their family who would otherwise basically beat the money out of them. Another way to think about this, which is, I think, really important, is that our future is going to be one of digital money. And so really we have two choices. One form of digital money is completely controlled end-to-end by banking organizations that feed all of the data to government in a cozy relationship that protects them from competition and gives totalitarian surveillance to government. That's a dystopia. That's a very dangerous future that's toxic to democracy. And the alternative is digital money, but controlled by the people, not subject to censorship or surveillance. And I think that's really why a lot of people in even developing worlds and the developed world are also interested in Bitcoin. It offers an alternative to a future that we're marching to, headlong, and which may be very dangerous to the basic institutions of freedom.
Interesting. So, last question. What you just said sort of sparked this last question. How do you see this playing out? If you had some sort of concept of what the future might look like, and of course, the banks and governments will try to respond in the ways that they know how, which is by force. How do you see cryptocurrency and Bitcoin going beyond that and going through that and possibly living through a revolution, hopefully not a bloody one? How do you see it coming out on the other side once the governments and the banks do try to clamp down on this?
I think it's inevitable that we are going to see a backlash, and really some governments are going to strongly object to the idea that their citizens should control their own money. And at that point, you should ask, why are those governments objecting, and what's wrong with that form of government rather than what's wrong with Bitcoin? The corruption, the centralization, the fragility of the system inherent in all of the problems we see are leading to crises that are getting bigger and bigger over time. And there are plenty of countries where money goes into a hyperinflation spiral, And until now, governments had the ability to take an entire population hostage when that happened, but not anymore. Now people can essentially opt out of the economic system of their government and opt into the economic system of the internet using cryptocurrencies. And that's going to change geopolitics dramatically, just as the freedom to publish and speak on the internet, and the freedom to communicate and connect across borders on the internet has massively affected geopolitics. And now we're doing that with money. And it's going to have a ripple effect throughout history, regardless of whether Bitcoin itself, as the first attempt to make this happen, succeeds or not.
Thank you so much for all of this information. It's intense and inspiring to hear about it, because I did not have a very firm handle, but you did a great job of explaining it. Is there anything else that, like, any last tidbits that you want to put out there?
One little anecdote. Back in 2010, WikiLeaks, an organization that I'm sure you're well familiar with, was subject to an extrajudicial embargo, whereby the US government and other governments bullied Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, American Express, and other companies to cut off their funding. And WikiLeaks found itself without any funding, even though they had broken the law and had been charged of no crime and could defend themselves against no crime, because all of this was done without the judicial system. That shows the dangers of centralized control over money. In the end, WikiLeaks became one of the rallying calls in the early days of Bitcoin, and they started using Bitcoin to raise funds. Today, the vast majority of funds that WikiLeaks raises are directly in Bitcoin. And through Bitcoin, they've been able to break this embargo. And we're going to see this happening again and again and again.
For more on Andreas and his work, which focuses heavily on using technology to promote free speech, open and transparent networks, open governments, social justice, human rights, and citizen empowerment, follow him on Twitter at the handle below. And before we wrap up this Bitcoin segment, let me show you how to start spending and accepting Bitcoin in a matter of clicks and swipes. So, according to Andreas, one of the better Bitcoin wallets for iPhone is called Bread Wallet. For Android, he recommends Mycelium or Airbits. So, download the wallet app from your app store or whatever Android users have, and once you have it, you'll want to set up an account. And here's the best part. Remember when Andreas mentioned that you can essentially memorize 12 words? 12 words and your entire bank account will be saved wherever you go. Yeah, that's right here. The app will ask you to make a note of your phrase, and don't try to pull a screenshot because it doesn't like that. And it will immediately tell you not to try that shit again. So, in the interest of privacy and security, don't try that shit. At this point, you'll feel a bit like James Bond and will immediately find a paper and pen to write down your phrase, memorize it, and then swallow the paper, or just hide it somewhere. The app will also ask you for a PIN, which acts as a safety mechanism when you decide to send money or check your account balance. The app will then generate a QR code, aka those squares containing what looks like over-pixelated sticks that you use to get into concerts and movies, onto planes, etc. It will also generate a number. These are your Bitcoin wallet identifiers. A person with Bitcoin can scan the QR code to send you money. That's mine, by the way, so if you've been itching to donate to the cause, have at it. You just scan the QR code or input the number and send them money. And before the transactions are sent, or before you can take a look at your transaction history and account details, you have to type in that PIN again. And furthermore, you don't have to worry about figuring out the conversion from dollars or euros or yen or whatever to Bitcoin. You can input your own currency and it will automatically convert to Bitcoin, showing you both in any transaction. From here, go crazy. Add a Bitcoin option to your online store. Find businesses in your area that accept Bitcoin. Transfer some money from the old guard to the new guard. Just don't forget those 12 words and that 4-digit PIN. And again, for more information on the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency movement, follow Andreas and check out the Let's Talk Bitcoin website at letstalkbitcoin.com.